Welcome back to Ride JBI. This is JB. Today we finished a suspension revalve on a WP XACT 6500 cartridge drop-in and also a suspension revalve on this 2023 WP linkage shock. This suspension is being mounted to a 2023 KTM 300 SX. It was set up to the JBI suspension motocross spec. At ridejbi.com you can find information on what we call the JBI spec WP XACT 6500 cartridge setup or cartridge kit. That are these two cartridges we're looking at here, one for each fork. Each cartridge is complete with custom JBI spec valving. It has already been filled with oil. The proper springs have been selected and installed. So these cartridges are ready to install and drop in into the forks. These are very similar componentry as what you'd find in the WP cone valve fork, also known as the WP XACT 7548 fork. What I mean by that is the actual hardware and the components that we see that make up these cartridges are nearly identical to what you'd find in those complete kit WP cone valve and 7548 forks. And I'm sharing that because that is a good thing. These drop-ins are essentially those kit level componentries available as a insert drop-in. The main difference is that these cartridges features shims at the mid valve. The mid valve is about right here on the cartridge assembly, and these ones use shims instead of the cone valve. Both setups can work very well when set up well and optimally for the rider and type of terrain that they are riding. At Ride JBI, we have a few other mods that we do as well to these cartridges during our revalve. Of course, we revalve the internal shims inside. We change out their pressure springs for a different spring rate. And for our moto settings, we also change out the low speed valves. These are these silver posts. This is what your compression piston sits on or mounts to inside your fork, and this is what your compression clicker interfaces with. So when you adjust your compression clicker here, that center screw, you're interfacing with this post and how much oil can flow through the center of it here and come out these 4 bypass holes. When you adjust your clicker, you're adjusting how far a needle goes inside or out of it, and that affects how much volume or how much oil can flow through this. The JBI subvalve has a similar concept. We have a hole in the center for oil to flow through, but these 4 holes at the bottom have moved up top, and what we can now do is we can actually cover these holes with a shim. So now not only can we regulate what we call low speed bleed with the compression clicker. So again, we can regulate this valve with our compression clicker as well, but we can also regulate the flow by adding or removing shims on here as well. So that gives us adjustable or additional tunability when it comes to this. This type of component, a subvalve, is commonly found in all KYB A-kit forks and KYB production forks. The same can be said for Showa componentry as well. The low speed valve, or aka subvalve, is also found in the 2023 WP XACT 7548 Pro forks. At Ride JBI, we didn't want to miss out on the added benefits of the subvalve, so we went ahead and made our own. Ours are made out of strong titanium. Pretty much you get the strength of steel and lightness of aluminum. So that is another piece to the puzzle for our JBI spec WP XACT 6500 cartridges. Details on these can be found at ridejbi.com. This Generation 3 WP linkage shock was also revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec. We also did some custom coatings as well. The bottom rebound adjuster was Cerakoted black. The shock shaft was DLC coated black. The shock body tube was anodized a Fauxshima brown. And the upper shock mount was Cerakoted black. In about a month from now, this free piston cylinder will be changed out to our JBI bladder kits, which will be available about in a month to a month and a half. Those will have a brown cylinder and red cap, so it'll look very similar to what's over here, and it'll really complete the look of that shock. It's gonna look pretty cool. If you haven't checked it out, RideJBI has been doing a series of videos of our testing, tuning, and development of the 2023 KTM suspension. So if you want to follow along and see how we've come to these settings we currently have today, you can check that out. And that'll be a series that we will be ongoing updating over time, because at RideJBI we are always testing, tuning, and developing and continuing to improve the settings that we have for all your makes and models, bikes, and types of suspension, meaning KYB, Showa, or WP. This Generation 3 WP linkage shock has come a long way from its first release in 2011. And then that was updated in 2015 and a half on the factory edition bike from KTM. And then it was updated again in 2022 and a half on the KTM factory edition again to the style of shock that we see now. It's all new design in terms of the piston inside. The free piston design is all different. So very cool stuff. I think WP has continued to make really big improvements on their stock suspension components in terms of the actual hardware, how it's finished, but also the stock settings as well. When you buy a new KTM Husqvarna or Gas, the stock settings are much better than they were in the past. Their bikes are becoming much more competitive right off the showroom floor. At RideJBI, we like figuring out how we can make that even better, and we've been very pleased with the shock settings we have developed for our motocross spec, and also the motocross spec settings we have developed for these WP XACT 6500 cartridge forks. If you'd like RideJBI to do your suspension, please give me a call or send me an email. We'll talk about the year, make, and model bike that you have, what options are available, and which setup would be most advantageous for you. All JBI suspension services and parts can be found at ridejbi.com.